Are we doing another one? I am Robert.
Yes, and I am Reggie.
And this is
I am
L3
not.
Podcast. We've never done that intro.
No.
And you guys are, let's start with ladies first.
Okay. I am Nancy Hill Beluk. I'm a research coordinator at the University of Pittsburgh at the Pediatric Imaging Research Center. So I primarily focus on pediatrics, and I was, because I want to be as much like Bill Faulkner as I can. That is my life goal. So I did become the president of the ISMRT a few years back during COVID because, well, you know, Bill started out as the, well, number one.
The first president.
The
yeah.
first
So do I address
president.
you as president? Because and you came with Secret Service today.
Well, you know, I gotta carry my protection around. You know, they gotta carry my bags. Yeah.
She's got a lot of baggage.
And
You know what? I walked
set
you
him
into
up,
that. I walked you
and
into
then
that.
this man over
Okay.
here with the quick one-liners. You are?
I am Bill Faulkner, an MRI tech, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Born and raised there. Lived there all my life. And very happy about that.
When are you going to invite us out there? Tennessee
Well,
is
you can
beautiful.
come anytime, yeah. I mean, it's weird.
You have a guest bedroom?
Chattanooga's in a nice part of Tennessee. To me, I like Tennessee, everything Nashville east.
Right.
I mean, no offense to anybody who lives on the west side of Tennessee, but it's just vastly different. All the mountains and stuff are on the east side.
It's like the Hatfields and McCoys.
No.
Well, I guess, how do we dive into this topic? The topic itself is just like, you know, diversifying yourself as a MR technologist, you know, educating the community.
Right.
And different ways of going about that. And so,
And I feel like a large part of our community, people who watch it on 3 podcasts, of course, since we aren't giving you continuing education. So if you're watching this, you're probably someone who does a little bit more than others, you know?
borderline
Agree
nerd.
with that.
Yeah. So honestly, you probably have thought about this topic, right? Like how do you even get published? Why would you get published and things like that? So I think this topic for sure will resonate. It resonates with me, and I'm sure it'll resonate with our community for
Well,
sure.
I'd like Nancy to kind of start out because we were talking about this, and she did a paper, one of her more recent papers here.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I think that's important if you're going to think about writing on something is start with something that, you know, is kind of a passion for you. What have you really got that, you know, really gets you to thinking, really, you
Right.
know, you enjoy doing. So that's why, you know, this
Right.
one in particular, you know, having to do with pediatrics.
Right. So, you know, yes, we say passion, but it also can be looked at as an annoyance, right? Is there something in your job that's annoying the garbage out of you? He would say crap. That, you know, you just don't feel comfortable with, and you see something that's missing, and you can't put in suggestions to the higher ups going, this just isn't working for me.
Because they come back with crickets.
Yeah. So it started out with hearing protection for pediatrics. There just wasn't anything. And there was nothing that made me feel good when I would leave the patient in the scanner and being on the other side and, you know, crossing your fingers, hoping that they're not hearing, you know, what we're trying to prevent. So it started out, yes, as a passion and an annoyance, and it became a publication. And I'll give you the title of the publication. We put it into the Journal of Radiology Nursing because getting the word out to technologists is one thing, but getting the radiology nurses to know that this device that I was investigating, looking at, beta testing, worked. The first line of defense is the nurses, right? They need to say, okay, this device can go in and whatnot, and have them have some buy-in along with it. So the title of the publication that I wrote, and I have it written because it's kind of long, and I've asked Bill to write a song with this.
We
the,
love this.
yeah, I know. So the magnetic resonance imaging evaluation of a hearing protector device designed for neonatal patients. So kind of really, yeah, it's long, but it tells you. So I wrote this along with a gentleman on our lab, Vince Lee, fabulous guy. We also brought in a lesser known person, Frank Shellock. Anybody?
I've
Anybody?
heard the name.
Rings a bell.
It does.
Hair,
ring a bell.
long hair.
We know him as Frank the Tank.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Oh, now
the
the
Hawaiian
Hawaiian.
shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great guy.
So, when you're writing anything with regard to safety or use or trying to prove a device, you got to go with Frank and stuff
Right.
like that. But from the technologist side, I needed to take this and scan with it with different sequences on a cupric sulfate phantom and prove that it didn't cause any distortion or things like that. So that's how this started out, was finding a device, finding a company that had been working on a product. As I said, it was originally designed for the NICU, and then it was then adjusted for the frequencies of a transport in a helicopter, and then we found out that those were identical to MRI. So when this came out, when the conversation was no names to radiologists, the radiologist would say, "We don't need that. We have stuff."
Right. What we do works.
Yeah.
And do you know that how?
What's the
Right.
metrics on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's the metrics? Because
Right.
you can't ask the kid.
Yeah.
So what is the name of this?
So it's from NeatCap is the
Okay.
company. It's called a DREAMIES, and so it's a passive hearing protection, and it's more of a cup. I have some instead of a earring protection that goes into the canal, so it's a cup that goes on the outside of the ear, and it has a strap that keeps it against the head. And it goes around the auricle. So, there's two types of hearing protections: those earplugs that go in the canal, and the muffs or that go around. So the problem with all of them is they're not the size, shape designed for MR or for pediatrics.
I mean, because hearing protection has got to go. If you're going to use plugs, it's got to go in the canal.
Right.
Right,
And then
Right.
therein lies the problem with the little kids. You can't
Right.
get anything in their canal.
right. So it became the the writing portion was to get the information out there, right? And so that's one of the questions is as technologist radiographers, we need to do this,
Right,
right?
right.
So, it seemed pretty simple to just say this doesn't cause any artifacts or distortion or doesn't torque, but it needs to be written up, right? And so you need to start with the smallest denomination and then build from there. So when someone says, that's been written about, well, yeah, but the next step hasn't. In most articles and posters, whatever, abstracts you read, it always says, well, but more needs to be done
Yeah,
because
Right.
additional investigation.
yes,
Because
Right.
you look at it, they'll in almost all papers, you'll get to an end, and generally speaking, they may make a statement about limitations of the study are
Right.
So they admit, okay, small sample size.
It's a pilot, yep.
Yeah, just as
Poorly
an
trained
example.
technologist, and there's never one, right?
Yeah, right. But I mean, it's so you can look for stuff that needs further investigation, or maybe how you use it. How do you do it at your facility?
So
Yeah.
I guess the step one is passion. Step two is identifying.
right. Where this needs, who it needs to be disseminated to,
Yeah.
right? Or what you want to present, right? So this was just a preliminary publication. It's not necessarily yet a poster, okay? And it sounds weird. There's differences. When you do a publication, you have a lot more graphs, and you have a lot more. Here are the frequencies, and here's the torque, and here is the
Our materials and methods. What did we use? How
Yeah.
do we do it?
Right.
And then what did we find?
Right.
I see.
right. And so when you do an abstract or a poster or a presentation at a conference, you want the pictures, right? You want to wow them.
Right.
And so there is no wow, if you will, with hearing protection. Because, okay, so here's with and without. Okay, there's motion, there's not motion. That's not sexy.
Well, to me, there is a wow because I've done pediatric imaging and I used these methods of trying to protect their patient's hearing. And I'm seeing now in hindsight that it wasn't as effective as I thought it was. And wow, what
Right.
I did wasn't efficient.
Right.
And so
Right.
there's room for improvement.
Yeah.
when you're writing these abstracts, does the goal, like, does it always have to be like quantitative information that you're providing?
You know, there's one of the things I've seen is, like, for example, when you try to convince somebody of a new technique,
Mm-hmm.
then they'll say, well, has anything been written on this?
Right.
Which is kind of, you know, kind of stymies everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? And, you know, it can be frustrating if you're trying to introduce this new technique and the radiologist says, well, is anything written on this yet? Right? Because
Right.
they don't trust it until, you know, they see it in writing.
Right.
And I think it was Jeff Weinreber one time, I heard him say, the plural of anecdotes is not data.
That's pretty
Oh.
profound. You really have to do a deep dive in your brain to think of that one
right.
out.
The plural of anecdote is not data. So just because you got somebody that tells you all this stuff doesn't mean
Right.
it's actual
Yeah,
data.
Right.
So you have to, you know, you have to have methods, depending on what you're doing, that will, for example, take out all other kinds of variables.
Right.
Right. So
Yes.
it's, you know, these studies are, when they on the news, nothing irritates me more with this because they keep coming, going back and forth. You know, drinking 3 more cups of coffee a day improved. Like, well, what about everything else you're doing? Okay,
Yeah.
so you're, you know, so you would have to eliminate somebody from doing anything but drinking 3 cups of coffee.
Right.
Right.
Oh, that's a good point.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's
so many
meaningless.
variables.
It's meaningless to me.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then my wife said, "See, you're drinking too much coffee." And I'll go like,
It's only coffee.
What about
Could be
else?
scotch.
But I play
Skewed.
pickleball, you know. I tried to, you know.
Pickleball. Don't even.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But you know, with medical devices, bringing them into an MR, we have so much more we need to prove.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
You know, you don't need to do that when you're in the NICU or CAT scan and things like that. We need to prove distortion and torque and heating and
Mhm.
whatnot, and that the material, you know, isn't made with a Velcro that, you know, over time, you know, causes artifacts. So it is a whole different approach with MRI.
Right.
And then coming from a technologist radiographer, I'm not going to say it holds a little more gravitas, but it says I'm using this and going to use it. And, you know, I suggest you give it a try. But to Bill's point, then the radiologist said, well, you know,
Right.
how you tell me, and well, bang.
There's that
sorry.
paper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a publication.
So then what advice would you give for somebody who does decide that they want to write something and the steps to take to make sure that it's, you know, that people are able to see it?
Right.
Well, I would say get somebody that's done
Frank
it before.
Shellock.
Seriously, get somebody that's done it before.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And Frank's going to
I'm-
do it, but
yeah.
get somebody that's done it before.
Right.
Okay. If that's your first, you know, foray into it.
Right.
The other thing you can do is join the ISMRT,
Right.
Right.
and they have annual meetings. They have other
Local.
types of meetings, local, regional meetings,
Right.
stuff, and kind of. You know, a good first start is like do a poster.
Right.
Poster's a little different. Pictures, very short description of
Right.
materials, methods, what you did, and samples of what you came up with.
Yeah.
Every meeting, every year at the Ohio State, historically at the
Sure.
Ohio State MR conference that they do in Columbus, usually in the late winter, early spring, they'll have the students from the individual programs, and they
Right.
have them do posters, and
Right.
we'll go through and we'll look at the posters and
Right.
Right.
the posters and stuff. But that's a good way to start. It's not so much as, you know,
Right.
in depth as a paper, because then you've also got to get it published. Okay, and so that's where it helps to have somebody to help you navigate the waters to get it published. Because if it's peer reviewed, if it's a peer reviewed paper, then you're going to submit it to the journal and whatever you're going to submit it to, and then they're going to have people review it. You got to have a thick skin. Okay,
Dang.
you know, you can't take something personal because you're probably going to get some feedback, and you know, you need to take that feedback and learn from it. I'll give you an example. A Dr. Val Runge, who's well known in the MR for years,
Mhm.
Dr. Runge was, I'm pretty sure he was the first one to publish a paper on the use of gadolinium. He was very early on, if not the first in there. He used to be at Vanderbilt years ago. From South Texas. He's over in Switzerland now.
Oh.
He sent me pictures of this pond where he's fishing. It's like, it's nauseating. Anyway, he asked me several years ago in the first edition of his book, it's called MR Physics Taught Through Images or something like that,
Nice.
to write several chapters.
Right.
Nice thing, and I don't like to write. I mean, I really don't like writing.
Right.
You know, name William Faulkner, you think.
So do you like writing, Bill? I just want to make
don't
sure.
like
Okay,
writing.
just
Really
want to
don't
make
like to
clear
do
on
it.
that
So
one.
real quick,
Uh,
where's your stance on writing?
I don't like it. But anyway, Val talked me into, he goes, there's no money, but there's fame and fortune. Yeah, anyway, so, but the nice thing about this book was it's small chapters. So like he wants really no more than 2 pages because he says it's for radiologists. They have a short attention span. And so, you know, and he wanted to keep it simple, minimal physics, you know, as much as possible, rely more on images and things like that. Great little book. Anyway, so one of the chapters he had me write was on signal to noise ratio. Now, I've taught MRI for many, many years. I felt very comfortable writing a little 2-pager on signal to noise ratio. So I write that, I send it off. He sends it to this physicist to review. Okay. And I later find out that this physicist is well known in his company and other stuff like that for not being a really great people person and basically will tell you what he thinks. Okay. Right. At any rate, I get the reply back from him and he just tore it to shreds. He didn't like anything about anything the way I explained anything. I mean, it was just, this is wrong. This is not correct. It's not the way it works. And, you know, he goes through and, you know, says what, you know, where I was all wrong, which was a lot. And, you know, and I had been teaching this. I mean, it got me past the registry. It doesn't mean it wasn't exactly, it's just not, you know, correct scientifically standpoint, you know,
Right.
you know, anyway, so that really upset me. So I called Val Runge. I said, Val, maybe I'm just not the right one for this gig. He's in his Texas accent says, I really wanted to call you before you saw the email. He says he does this to everybody, even me. Just don't worry about it, you know. So I did. I took out everything that made me want to cry and wrote it and looked at it. It changed the way I teach signal to noise ratio.
Oh.
Completely changed the way I teach. Also, fortunately, when I rewrote it and sent it back, he comes back and goes, yes. And then the other next chapter I had to write was on contrast, image contrast.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, oh, Lord, here we go. So I'll be on my TRT, you know, send that contrast. I mean, it comes back and says, I almost had a heart attack. This looks good to me. I'm like,
Finally got your style down.
yeah. So anyway, but you have to have a thick skin because you're going to get pushback and learn from it.
Yes.
Right.
I think people, I always said, you know, when I was going to go sit and listen to an MRI talk, I want it to be over my head. I want it to be, I don't want to sit through a talk where I'm going to sit there and nod my head the whole time, you know.
Right.
I want it to push me. I want it to be more. And that's the way you learn. You learn. You can't learn anything if you don't admit what you don't know.
Right.
And
Right.
there's a lot of people who don't know what they don't know.
Yeah,
Right?
That's very
Right.
well.
You know, Clint Eastwood says, "Man's got to know his limitations." You know, and so you know,
Is that your
gotta-
Clint Eastwood impression?
Yeah, it was not my best.
He's
Try
been
it again. Take 2.
Man's got to know his limitations.
Hey.
You know.
All right.
But-
So
But these are book chapters and publications, and you know you have to know what's inside you, right? If you're a person who wants to get up in front of an audience and do a talk, then you go to a conference, and it's a little bit different of a style. You have a little bit more, you know, leeway as you're talking, and as we've talked, you know, knowing the audience and seeing if they're shaking their head yes or no, and kind of adjusting on the flow. But if you're just kind of starting out, and you just want to get your information out, then I would say posters, right? Submit
right,
it.
or
Oh,
you can.
He doesn't agree with me.
No.
No.
I say that, but or you could write an article that the ISMRT would publish in some of their stuff they put out.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
You know, you could write a self-study, you know, for credits.
Right.
Right.
Well, and that's the other thing, right? So if you're at a center and you see some unusual pathology that others may not typically see. I'm just going to say moya moya because I love saying moya moya. I think it's a brilliant. But, if you don't see it and you have a case study and it's just, you can write up a case study,
Yeah.
Right.
and make a poster of that or do a real quick case review, as you were saying, because if you've never seen it,
Right.
but that's, I think, where the technologist radiographer needs to sit back and go, yeah, you do know things. You do have information and knowledge that someone may not. You just, no one's pointed it out to you, and it's all in there. So it's somewhere between having a passion or discuss with something that's going on or finding something that's different, right?
Right.
And kind of highlighting that. And, as new sequences come out, if you're one of the first people using it or using it in a different way, you need to write that up.
Yeah.
Because,
Somebody may not think of it. Or
No.
Right.
No.
Well, would you stay away from, because a lot of people have overlapping passions, right? Would you stay away from writing on something that's maybe it's already been written on?
And that's where I go, heck no. And
Right,
he
right.
goes, heck no.
Right.
Because it's just building blocks, right?
Right.
The more you, if you go and do a PubMed search or a Google Scholar search and there's only one article on it, you go, dang. But when there's 3 and 4, then you're on to something, right? So
Right.
we need those 3 or 4. So this publication that we have, like I said, was just the root of it, proving that it works, proving that it is supplying the hearing protection. The next one is then going into all of the frequencies and stuff, and that this attenuates and sound pressure waves, and I didn't even go into using padding, or do you not, do you do it alone? There's a lot of sites who think the more hearing protection you use,
More layers.
is better. Well, no, it's an onion,
not,
right?
yeah.
So, but that has to be shown. That has
Right.
to be proven, because we're not going to change anybody's mindset or save anybody money when they're buying 15 different types of things when they may only need 1 or 2. So, that's the next step. So, if there's a site that's using this, then they kind of cite my publication
Mhm.
and then go from there. And it's not as though I'm going to go, "Ooh, you're I did that." No, I want you to build off of that.
Right.
I want to hear there's a technologist at another site that gives me a ring and goes, "Okay, I'm on. I get it. Now I want to go from there." So
You brought up references. I mean, this is another thing.
Citations.
Citations.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at, and not the kinds you get.
No, when you're
down the
driving.
road.
No,
Right.
Parking.
no.
Not
As we're
that kind
driving.
of citation, but where you're building off of somebody else's work. And so one of the things when you're writing a paper, particularly peer reviewed, if I were to make a statement, for example, that it's been shown that you can see gadolinium enhancing lesions quite well on a T2 flare, and it's very helpful for meningeal and leptomeningeal disease.
Mhm.
Okay, I probably ought to cite that because I guarantee you there's a paper out there on it. Now, tell people how to get to, if you're not, got yourself a medical library, but you don't need one. I don't have one. If you just type in, go to open up a web browser, type PubMed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it'll take you to an NIH, I think it is, website. They catalog everything, all
Nice.
medical,
Yeah.
even outside of it. I mean, everything. Urology journal.
Right.
Everything.
Right.
And so then you can just type in a search. Try not to get too specific. Type in a search, and it's going to give you all these abstracts. And you don't need to look at the whole paper. You can look at the abstract, and the abstract tells you whether or not it supports what you just said.
Right.
And then that becomes your reference. It's extremely easy to do and costs no money.
Right.
And that's a way to look up articles and
Right.
things, and that's the way I do it.
Yeah.
It's
Do you use ResearchGate at all?
I have used it. I keep going back to PubMed just because
You always go
paywall.
back to PubMed. ResearchGate, though, is a way of then putting in my conference posters, my conference papers, and things like that.
Oh, okay.
So that they're not necessarily published, in a journal, but they
They're-
can be referenced.
I see.
So that's where ResearchGate would then give you the smaller, just simple abstracts. So
I have to look back at that again.
I'm a
it
help
pops
here.
up. It pops up every once in a while.
right.
You know, and the other thing was I was doing expanding a talk I do called Normalization of Deviation,
Love
and reading a one of my news feeds in the morning, it referenced this article where a radiation oncologist wrote something about normalization of deviance, the Titan submarine disaster, a wake-up call for radiation oncology. And he was referencing normalization of deviation, where dangerous practices become so ingrained that they become normalized. And so it's not seen as dangerous because there's no immediate detrimental effect. There's other things that go into that. And at any rate, he was referencing the term normalization deviation is the origin of it is credited to Diane Vaughan, who's a sociologist, wrote a book on the Challenger disaster. So he was kind of referencing that too. And so anyway, while I was reading, what I did is went to PubMed to find it. While I was reading it, down here there's references for similar articles. I click on another one, and here's another one that pops up referencing normalization of deviation and, the dangers, and all that kind of stuff of normalizing dangerous practices. At any rate, that's why I like researching stuff like that, because you'll find numerous
Rabbit hole.
papers. Yeah. And, so that's.
If you're on YouTube, you probably like rabbit holes.
yeah. You found this. You've probably been in a few rabbit holes, right?
Late night, 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Rabbit hole.
Right.
But, another type of publication that I've had experience with is termed a white paper, very
Yes,
similar
yes,
to
you
like
have.
a case study. It's not peer reviewed. And I've done this for, but the last one I did it for a device manufacturing company. So the device manufacturer was a neurostimulation system that before they got their conditions of use to B1 plus RMS, they had an SAR condition of use. The SAR condition of use was 0.4 watts per kilogram. Okay. And so they're getting a lot of pushback from sites that going, we can't scan at 0.4 watts per kilogram. Our radiologists won't let us change protocols, which is typically nonsense. It just means they don't want to change protocols, but whatever. At any rate, so they asked me, they said, well, does this really create a problem imaging? And I go, I don't think so. I can do that. So, they said, what would you do to prove it? I said, okay, so here's what I set out to do. So I'm going to do a lumbar spine, a 4 series. And you also had to do it within 30 minutes because you had a 30-minute scan time limit, okay?
Right.
So 0.4 watts per kilogram in a 30-minute time limit. So I said, okay, let's do, I think I can do a 4 series lumbar spine in 30 minutes.
Okay.
And I'm going to match ACR requirements for spatial resolution.
Okay.
And not to hold you up, but I'm curious, what year was this? Because is this before like ARDL?
ARDL is
Deep learning? Because imagine you're a GE guy.
It was before, before the artificial intelligence.
Okay.
So this was, I don't know, time flies now, whatever, 5-6 years ago, I don't know, maybe something like that. Okay. Yeah, probably in that range, I guess. Not too long ago, at least in my way of thinking. But it was before artificial intelligence. So even if it wasn't, I didn't have any.
Right.
Okay.
Artificial intelligence.
Oh, he set you up.
You're
Come on
sleeping.
now.
I served you up one.
You took mine
do it.
before.
Everybody wins.
Nancy?
Are you gonna, hello.
Hello, you there?
Anyway, so just using
I'm a
routine,
nice person.
multi-channel coils. I mean, nothing super,
Okay.
duper, And so I went through and did it. Got a volunteer to lie in the scanner, bought him a bottle of wine, and not when they're in there, but
No, not.
as payback. Did it, and it's out there. Company's Nevro. It probably doesn't matter because it's a white paper, and many people have seen it. So what they would do is give it to a site, and then go, here's some guidelines. How you can actually do this. And quite honestly, the easiest one to get down at 4 watts per kilogram or even lower is a fast spin echo T2. Believe it or not, you jack the TR up to way up there, 12,000, something like that. Okay. The scan time's maybe 5 minutes or something like that, 5-6 minutes. But again, you're only doing 4 series, you can get it in 30 minutes. But it really, keep the same slices and stuff. It really drops the SAR down significantly.
So like me, because I do have an interest in this personally, I would like to do. In fact, we're going to talk later, you and I.
Mm-hmm.
But I find the whole thing to be somewhat intimidating and overwhelming. Like, so for example, let's say you have written something. How do you know if it's just a poster, if it is a white paper? How do you identify like its value?
Well, like the purpose of this one,
it
when
has value.
It has value.
Let's just start there.
Right. It has value to the company. Now, my name's not the only one on that white paper.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I called Frank. Frank reviewed it. Okay.
Right.
But Frank's named on it. I got a radiologist there at the imaging center. I go, hey, I'm going to show you these images. I just want you to tell me if you agree that they're diagnostically sufficient, adequate image quality diagnostically sufficient. So I got somebody, neuroradiologist, right, to review it.
And you told him that you were going to use his name as...
Oh, yeah, his name's on the paper.
Okay.
And that's the other thing, anybody, their name goes on the paper, they're a co-author. We did one.
Even if they just reviewed it.
Sure.
Yes.
You didn't help schedule the patient that they scanned.
Or did the scanning,
Well,
right?
yeah,
the
yeah,
technologist doing the scanning, or the nurse
Interesting.
who's helping put
Yeah.
these things on. And I didn't mean to take away from
No,
your-
but that's true. I mean, I didn't think about that, but yeah, the technologist that did the scanning.
Want to
I
be
mean,
acknowledged.
I mean, I'm sitting there.
Should
I mean,
be.
I can scan, but the software's changed so much. It's like it's hard for me to find. I know what I want.
Yeah.
I just don't know where to go get it.
Right.
And in fact, it's funny. One of the sequences I was using for the axial lumbar spine was a T1 spoiled gradient echo, which the radiologist actually liked better than the spin echo because you got better contrast, right? And so, they didn't have one in their protocol. So I'm seeing this young kid scan, and I go, okay, this is a G. So, okay, so I want an SPGR, I want a TR of about 400 or 500. I want a 256 by whatever matrix, the spatial resolution, and I want a, this flip angle. If we want a bright fluid, I want a 15-degree flip. He goes, how do you know that? And I go, well, going back, we learned the old-fashioned way. We, used to do it that way before it came pre-loaded for
Right.
it,
Right.
So anyway, so you put the people that help you. I did one here recently for another manufacturer. And again, put the text name on there. It's you got to attribute to everybody that helps you do it.
Right.
But that's
Right.
it helps to get people to review it, and
Right.
and like I said, tell you if you're going down the right path or something.
Yeah.
If you only had enough space in your resume to include one of these, which would you think is most impressive? A white paper, a poster, like what is you're trying to?
But I don't think in the CV, right? I mean, I have it as publications. I have it as posters at conferences, abstracts, and things like that. Those are separate categories. And I
Okay.
think the more diversified it is, and the more you have under each kind of category subheading, it says you're kind of broadening out. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, and he will, it's still the same kind of format, right? The writing style might be a little bit different. You might have a little bit more fun with a poster, but you still have to start with a problem, right? Why are we doing this? Why are we writing this? And then you have your methodology and, the sequences you use.
Results and a conclusion.
Right, results and a conclusion.
So pull some papers.
Right.
Just pull some papers and look at the
Right.
format.
Right.
Does that make sense? Just look
Yeah.
at the general overall format of what they're doing,
Right.
and always have those headings in it.
Yeah.
I don't know that any one thing or another has any more.
But is there
No.
value in not looking at that and being uninfluenced by it and just kind of
I'm
coming
not
up with
saying-
your own
I'm
format?
saying look at it from a format standpoint.
Okay.
Right.
But what about if you come up with your own format?
Well, you probably may not get
we
accepted.
like things the same.
You know.
Okay.
We are a little.
Okay,
you
and
know.
I'm a go against the grain kind of a guy.
Yeah, well, you know.
Well, okay, hold on. The go against the grain kind of people are those who now put QR codes on their posters.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, that's
true.
kind of,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then you get videos and whatnot. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just a whole level of
That's right.
of the new kids on the block.
Right.
And I so because
That's
I
fun.
know that if you do
Right.
have an interest in or
Yeah.
presenting at one of these conferences, RSNA, whatever it might
Yeah.
be, SM or ISMRT, that's something that you have to plan for like maybe a year in advance because they're booking these
Oh yeah,
these
absolutely.
presenters.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you're
gotta-
you're months out.
You gotta
Yeah.
qualify sometimes too, right? It's not like you submit a paper and you just walk right on in.
No. So interesting. You told your problem. I've been submitting posters, abstracts to ISMRT for years, and got a little cocky, if you will. So I put one together, and it was about contrast enhanced ultrasound versus the gold standard of MRI.
Right.
And so I wrote it, submitted it, didn't get it proofread, which now, in hindsight, you go, wow, I was really an arrogant little jerk. And it got refused. And I'm like, do they not know who I am? No, it
Right.
goes in without your name, right?
Right.
So it's blind to the reviewers.
Yeah.
And the reviewers just trashed it. And so I sent it to my friend, and you know who you are. And she now proofreads all of my stuff and my husband's stuff. And she said, "What were you thinking?" And I'm like, "What's wrong with it?" And she said, "Nancy, your methodology was all about the ultrasound technique. You put none of the methodology of the MRI." And I said, "Because we're MR techs, we know." And she goes, "But it's at an MR conference, you goofball." And
It would
so
have been great at an
they
ultrasound
would have
conference.
loved it at an ultrasound. So I went, wow. I mean, I just became so blind to not following the format. I know what I'm doing. Well,
Right.
obviously, I resubmitted it the next year and did very well in the scoring. But again, I added the methodology of the MR, what scanner we're using, what techniques we use, the protocol. All of that needs to be in there because, well, the title was comparing, and I gave them nothing to compare except for images. And I thought that
So,
would
like,
Maybe what you're thinking of maybe better is kind of a case study,
yeah.
where a case study doesn't really have any particular format to it
right.
in terms of, abstract, methodology,
Right.
results,
Right.
conclude, that kind of 4-part format, where a case study can be just whatever you want.
Well, and formats work to your advantage because it helps to kind of formulate the writing. It's the body of work itself.
Right.
So I see the value in that, but I don't know. I feel like once you start reading other people's stuff, you almost become influenced by it. So sometimes it's best not
Well,
to even.
influence isn't a bad thing if it helps direct you for what you're.
Right.
That's why you use citations, right? That's why we
Right.
took this based on this, and this. I did this.
Right.
Well, I guess what I kind of like, this might be a bad analogy, but like, so this is a creative work of art, or maybe not art, but it's creative work. And so is like maybe songwriting, but maybe a songwriter doesn't want to listen to other people's songs because they're going to become subconsciously
Well, you
influenced
can
by it.
get sued if you copy the song.
Yeah.
Right.
So they purposely shy away from listening to it because they don't want to know your format. They have their own format.
Yeah, but you can't really. You're only get in trouble if you plagiarize and you don't.
Yeah.
You
And
don't
cite them.
Well, but that, again, all the more reason to not like if you're not looking at other people's formats, then plagiarizing is not a concern.
Well, no. Again, by format, please understand format. I'm just talking
I was
about
just going
headings.
to say. Yeah.
No, I get it. Like a thesis, like
Yes.
body paragraphs, conclusion.
Right,
I
yeah,
understand.
right.
Right.
But I'm just saying, if you don't know the format, that would be a good way to do it. Just
Look at
some
other
examples.
abstracts.
Right.
Or
I'm just so anti-authority. I don't like to be
I-
told
I-
what to do.
I
did
can
get
see
it.
that. I can see
Yeah.
that. It's just or better
Scoff
yet,
law.
then just go pull a urology journal and look at a paper which won't influence anything you're writing.
Okay,
You know,
yeah.
Oh,
true.
that's fair enough.
because
But, I think the money cut comes with the findings, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so if you're sitting there in the methodology, as we did for this one, and I said, I looked at 10 babies. In the findings, in the conclusion, I better account for all 10 of those. Because while it seems inconsequential. You know there's going to be someone. And Bill has been at a conference where, you know, some of the audience member, their main goal is to listen to, you know, your presentation and find one little nuance and just dig on it.
I've been doing that the whole time we've been talking. You guys are doing great, though.
So in the findings for this, right, it was a pilot. It was just a quick N of 10. So it wasn't anything major. And we had one child who didn't make it through the study. It had nothing to do with the DREAMIES, but I trusted that the mom had burped the child, and she thought I was going to burp the child. Well, the child ended up burping. It's a nice way of saying it, in the scanner. And so they didn't complete the scan.
Oh, right.
So it wasn't that it failed. It was the child failed. Burped. So, you know, it's a matter of then saying I had 9 or 10, ended up with 9. Here's how long they stayed asleep. Here's all the sequences I got through. You know, here's how I prepped and did everything. And I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think when I first look at any publication or article, I kind of look at the beginning, what you're trying to tell me, and then I jump to the end, right? I read ahead and say, is this worth reading? And, you know, if it failed, you need to say, and there will be publications that say, this didn't work. And then sometimes I go, and I'm sure you do this too, then why did you publish it? But it has to be something then that someone can go back and look at, and it's a building block. So I know what not to do and redo this technique or try to redo it and make it win.
Right. Like, what was the metrics that you used to actually show that, you know, that it is successful?
Right. So, you know, you can't really, there's no one definition, right? It's the accumulation of everything. So we had babies in there. Like I said, it was an N of 10. Mm-hmm. We had 9 successfully go through. So what do I call successfully complete?
Right.
The whole protocol that we have set up for this age group, they completed it. They completed it without motion. You know, we know that there's certain sequences they're going to jump, jerk a little bit more. Mm-hmm. We may have to repeat those. We didn't have to do those long, repetitive, do it again, try again, go in. You know, do the, you know, hey, how you do, you know, not that you talk to them and say, how you doing, but, you know, calm them down, get them back to sleep, things of that sort, just being able to get through and, you know, oops, that probably sounded, and, you know, the little feet and the arms not moving.
Well, how long was the protocol?
Oh, well, so we're crazy, right, Bill? I mean, I've been told this is not typical. We give an allotment for an hour, and if I can take that hour, I will keep going. Because in research, the more sequences I have, believe me, down the road, I will find a use for them.
Well,
right?
Did I understand right that you had in there a functional sequence?
Oh, yeah.
So that's gradient echo EPI.
Oh, yeah, no. We do.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and that's another reason why, you know, maybe not bringing the parent in, because they hear that and they go wonky.
Wonk sounds like an alarm.
Right.
Yeah. No, we do functional imaging. We do FWI, DTI.
You know, they made it through the whole
thing.
Wow.
And to me, you know, that's a success. I actually had some kids who would come out and they'd still be kind of like, no, I was chill. I was good. And here's the other thing.
You wake them up and they go, what?
What? I was sleeping in there, dude. It was only an hour. My nap is 2. But taking them out of the scanner and kind of how we knew, well, they were still asleep or kind of groggy or kind of just chill. When you take the earplugs out, you don't know. You can't see down into the canal. We've said this. You don't see an impression of it. You know, with the putty, you don't see an impression. When you take this off of the child's head, you would see the impression, right? I would say to the parents, listen, when you put a ball cap on a kid's head, they're going to have the little red mark.
It'll go away.
It'll go away. But so you would see this still around the ear. And so I knew that
it was sealed.
It sealed. It worked. And it was still working when I took it off. So
awesome.
It's like the proof is in the pudding. I guess the results are that you're getting diagnostic studies.
Yes.
Oh, the kids get pudding after this? It's a win-win for everybody.
The parents, like, they want to take them home, like, whatever.
That's not pudding.
Oh, look, the baby's laughing. Very funny.
But when a baby is less startled, right, less traumatized, well,
Right.
then you're getting longer image acquisition times,
Right.
which means you're able to provide more value to the
Yes.
study
I know
itself.
adults you can't do bold imaging on, so that is impressive.
Right. And one of the ways of evaluating, right, if a child is calm, is that's why we put on pulse ox and we put monitors on. We're looking for that agitation. We're looking for the heart rate to go up. We're looking for the respiratory rate to go up.
So there kind of is a metrics to it in a way.
Yeah. So when you see that kind of just chillaxing, then
Right.
though
great.
now, did I put that in the no, because did I record on everybody? Did I monitor on everybody? No, because after a while you go, I got it. I
Right.
got it. So my metric was, did I finish them? Were they in there the entire time? Were they still asleep? When I brought them out, was the red mark around the ear, and had I placed it, and was it easy to place? I don't know if this is allowed, but if my grandchild needed to go in, I now know I would not really want earplugs.
Right.
Right? Is that a plug? I don't know if I'm allowed to do that. Sorry.
Oh, I
But-
see what you did there.
Yeah, see
Yeah.
what I did there? But, now that I've done it, now that I've used it, I'm comfortable in my skin knowing that, I'm on the other side and I'm scanning. And,
Just as a reference, like when you would run these tests
Mhm.
on people who, like the kids who did have earplugs,
Mhm.
how long would they last with the study?
never the
Never
hour.
to the end,
No,
right.
we're like going. The first 20 minutes are my money cuts, right?
Right.
I do all those sequences, and then it's just
Time hack.
Anything
Yeah.
else is gravy.
anything
if you do it.
else is gravy. But when it got to the point where we could get through
An hour worth
in
of
the gravy,
study.
and that's 55 minutes. Let's I don't want to push it. I don't want to be a liar. So
That's great.
So we were just really rolling along.
That's awesome.
But no, you have to in there say if it failed or if it
So when you have the data, and I imagine the topic itself kind of determines your direction, but and you're writing something, do you want to include more pictures? Is it mostly because we do diagnostic imaging, like people like visual aids?
Exactly. So for this we weren't really looking at any specific brain lesion or anything like that. So it wasn't I was going to say using the DREAMIES, you see arachnoid cysts. Well, that didn't relate.
Right.
So it was more the artifact, the torque. There wasn't any. There was, the baby slept longer. So having a video of a baby sleeping wouldn't also have been very sexy. But
Right.
that's, that's what I built on next. So this was the publication to prove it. And then it's doing poster presentations at trade shows and whatnot, conferences, to then show the images and then show the graphs of
I was gonna say, like charts could still be a
Well, see,
visual
for-
aid.
Oh, yeah.
So for something like this, okay, if your whole thing's about hearing and it's about decibel levels and it's about frequencies and stuff like that, that's a lot of graphs. I mean, that's just going to be graphs that prove the point. If, however, so the white paper I did for the Nevro for imaging at 0.4 watts per kilogram or less, that's images, right?
Right.
There's a protocol chart. Here's my protocol I use,
Yeah.
but here's the images.
right.
And so depending on what you're doing, that may be a image heavy, case
Right.
study, article, whatever. Or if you're dealing with things like heating experiments, like that Frank would do and stuff like that, that's going to have a lot of graphs and stuff.
Right.
So it just really depends on what you're.
Yeah, it's a medical device versus a sequence. I mean, I don't think there's articles out there, publications, posters on, the hearing protection or the muff or,
Right.
you just,
Right.
So, but there's proof of use and things of that out there.
And like the results or the findings, I guess, no matter what it may be, whether it's this study is a failure or a success, it still has value.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
If you think about it, in MRI, it's as important to know what to do as it is important to know what not to do.
All right. Right.
You know,
Oh, well
Well
said.
said.
Yeah, can we put that underneath? You know,
Right.
it's
We're gonna
just
clip
that,
that.
Is it gonna be a pop?
That's a
Is it gonna be like a
bond line.
We the rainbow or something, you know.
I'll tell you though, the topic is kind of funny.
Sorry, I
The very first book I ever published, or having my name on a book, was the review questions for MRI that I did with
Sure,
Candy Ross,
with
like
Candy.
Passed
20,
my boards.
20 plus years ago.
Oh.
Yeah, black and
hate,
yellow.
I hate question the Bumblebee book. I hate
Bumblebee.
question and answer books. Okay, and I really don't recommend. That's not what I
but
recommend to study.
I would
But you know,
recommend.
people want them. People
You
want
want
it.
Right.
Anyway, so when that first came out, I've got my name on a book. You know, so
Right.
I'm giving my mother one. I took my X-ray school instructor one. Here you go. And you thought
Yeah.
you thought I
Look at me
Oh,
now.
my instructor told me. Yeah.
you know. And so
Everybody has
anyway,
X-ray.
so I got at home one day, and I had it was back when you had answering machines. So I had an answering machine, and I had a
Wow.
phone call. Please return the call. Library of Congress.
I've never
Spam.
heard this story.
Gotta be
Go.
spam.
Okay, so
Oh, wow.
my wife goes, "What's wrong?" I go, "I don't know." I mean, the government calls. I don't care what branch of the
It
government
doesn't
it is.
matter. It says
It's
library.
like, you know, just
Right.
that's probably not going to end well, right?
Right. Turn off the lights in the house.
Honey, turn the lights off. Draw the drapes. Get out of here.
They're watching.
So I called the Library of Congress, and I said, "This is Bill Faulkner. You called me?" She goes, "Yes. Is your name William H. Faulkner Jr.?"
Is that why they call it government name?
Well, that's my name, and they said, I said, "Yeah." They said, "Well," I said, "Why do you ask?"
Yes.
And they
Pray
said,
tell.
They said, "Well, we can't catalog it under William Faulkner."
Because there is a
William
very
Faulkner.
famous.
Yeah.
William
author.
Faulkner, the other guy.
Right.
The
I
other
said,
guy.
"He's dead," and they said, "But we can't.
No.
He's dead. What's he going to know, right?"
Yeah.
But they said we
Oh.
can't catalog it under that.
Oh,
and
my.
I said, "Okay." And they said, "Well, that's why we asked if you're William H. Faulkner Jr." And I said, "Okay. And how did you know?" They went and searched publications, and my name was on a paper years ago with GE. I mean, going back way with GE when Tom Fu that did the first 180 pulses.
Yeah.
You know, remember
Tom
that?
Fu.
Yeah. I think it was him that read and included me as a co-author because I did
The scanning.
Right. Right.
And they
Right.
said, "Well, we figured it was you since it was MRI. We just thought it was you. We just wanted to check." Because like,
That's a deep dive they did.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
You
impressed.
turn the lights back on after that, right?
yeah. Well, I also kind of
Poured a
go
drink.
look at Amazon.com and you type William Faulkner and you get all this, you know, Sound and Fury and you get all this other stuff and
Yeah.
then you get an MRI book.
Yeah.
On there.
Well, I did have
Well,
a question.
I check into a hotel, you know, I give them my credit card. They go, "William Faulkner, the author?" And I go, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Instant
Really?
upgrade.
Really? Or they'll say, "William Faulkner, any relation?" I go, "Yeah, my dad." What? Really?
It's not a lie. It's not a lie,
lie.
Bill. Not a lie.
That's great. Well, outside of the aspects of the knowledge sharing and, you know, being able to present it to your peers, is there any other benefit to actually doing, you know, these?
Why is it important to write?
Yeah.
You know, typically you ask on these podcasts, you know, what, you know, significant thing or whatever, you know, has meant a lot to you and stuff. And I think there is a bit of accomplishment in seeing that.
Right.
It's, you know, you know, as much as I hate to actually
Right.
write,
Yeah, you've told us.
I'm actually kind of getting less distasteful of it, but still not quite. It's because I'm inherently lazy. But for me, there's a great deal of personal satisfaction to it.
Well, you handed it out to your mom, your
Oh,
X-ray.
yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, but no, I was,
Right.
you know, real proud of it, you know,
Right.
and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong
Oh,
with that.
no.
But you know, when somebody says to me, "Well, why should I get," for example, so I'll put in a plug for the ABMRS, "Why should I get credentialed, you know, as an MR safety officer? Because I'm not going to get any more money for it." Well, you do it for your own self-improvement. You make
Right.
yourself a better person.
Right.
You learn stuff when you do this. Like I said, you know, I went through that horrible review for signal to noise ratio, but
Both
it
been there.
was monumental.
Right.
Right.
And when I realized that, then it makes such an impact on how I teach it and stuff. It's that's very useful. You learn. There's people who say, "I just want to punch the clock and go home." I feel sorry for you. I mean, I really feel sorry for you, because at the end of the day, when I was scanning, if I went home and I could say, I really helped that patient.
Right.
Right.
When somebody calls me and they say, you helped me pass the registry, it really makes me feel good. I feel like I've done something, contribute.
Right.
And so in writing stuff and looking at stuff that's a passion for yours, you help somebody else maybe gain a passion for that or understand something about it. So that, helps as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
So,
And I can't speak for you, but for the three of us, we're people persons. Are you?
Right.
Are you a people person?
well, I'm a
don't know.
trained extrovert.
Okay. But
My biggest regret is that 5 minute of extrovert
I knew
burst
we'd
I
have a
had
story.
the other day, and it
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
now paid for it. But anyway, no.
So, in the end, if I help one person, right? You've all talked physics to a group of technologists who have just come in, and you explain it just a little bit differently, and the light bulb goes on, and you feel like, wow, I did that, right? And it's not going to go noticed. I mean, no one's ever going to go, remember back on April 25th? No, but in your heart, your soul, and so that's with respect to writing. If it has one person who looks at it and reads it, and they improve their way of imaging a baby and protecting their hearing, then I've done my job, right? And I've done that one thing. But we meet people by doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I would never have met you guys, right? Well, I would have conferences and stuff like that. But people then come up to us at trade shows, at conferences, and say, "Hey, I read that, or I saw your poster. Let's go." Hopefully, they'll say, "Let's go get a beer."
Yeah.
And talk about it. And you meet people through doing this, through publishing, through writing, through going through conferences, and not just going to the show and being a spectator, right? You're now immersing yourself in it and saying, "I really want to be part of whatever this is, this euphoria that we get."
Even if you, like you say, are doing something that was very similar, maybe you say it just to Nancy's point, slightly differently. I always love to listen to people do basic MRI physics talks. Why? Because I'm going to learn something and go, that's a neat way to say it. That's a neat way to think of it. I've never thought of it that way before.
Right.
So,
and the more things you have in your pocket, the
Oh, yeah.
better you're going to be.
oh yeah, because then if somebody's not getting it, I'll try this explanation. You know?
Right.
Well, and at the end of the day, I think we're all professionals, and like one thing that's important as professionals is to create an impressive resume, and so you're creating opportunities for yourself by doing that.
If you want to be recognized as, I've always had this gripe with certain viewpoints in the technology field, right? The gripe because as technologists, we're not seen as professionals. Well, there's a lot of them don't act like a professional, right? You know,
Right.
Say a name.
they wanna be
Name names, Bill.
You know, they want to be spoon-fed, right?
Yeah.
Stuff, and I don't want to have to
Right.
work with it. You know, I don't want to have to try. Anyway, that's why I think this looking at, and again, it doesn't have to be a peer-reviewed journal, which is kind of like in my opinion, for something like that, it's kind of the top end thing.
Right.
Even books can be relatively simple thing to publish if you've got the right topic you're wanting to do and stuff like that. You can self-publish.
For sure.
Right.
Wow.
Have a
Well, and this kind of goes back to format question, but like, because I remember writing back in college and whatnot, one of the rules is not to write in first person, but is it okay to write in first person for these?
Like story driven? Like when you say first person?
Yeah, like I did this, and
Well, yeah, I mean, it's usually a we.
yeah. But and again, if it's a case review, then it is a you, me, we. But if it's a publication,
it's more.
then it's just facts and things of that sort. But something we didn't hit on is do you add the technologist, radiographer who's helping, and the nurse who helps set it up? Absolutely, because that goes on their resume, right, as well. But there's the first person, second person, last person. You know, there's a whole bibliography on all of that, right? So the first person is the one who's really doing the work. Primary author, right? And the second name there is the one that assisted and helped you the most, right? So in mine, it's Vince Lee, because he was really there. He was, you know, making sure that all of the testing we were doing was validated by not just me, but by him as well. So, and then, you know, then the third and fourth are the people who would be proofreading, and they're vital, right? So there is a way of putting, and the last person is always the who paid, who had the money, who is the most senior, if you will, of them. So Frank is at the end of this because he's the most senior and has the most publications on anything safety related. So there is a whole way of looking at just the authors and knowing, you know, where you fall in that.
Does it get easier? The more you write, just the easier it gets?
No.
You know?
No, you always start with it's a dark and
both
stormy
side
night.
at the same time.
You know, it's a dark and stormy night, and then you hope it falls in from there. Yeah, I mean, there's different ways, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes writing the methods was so much easier,
Right.
and then branching out from there. But when doing a case study, you start with, you know, what's the big sentence at the beginning and follow. So
Yeah, no, it's I always have to sit there in writing something like that and kind of play it on my mind, formatting it. When I put a talk together, let's say I'm going to do a talk, I have in my mind what I want to cover. And so what I sit down is I just start throwing slides together. You know, I typically
Yes.
pull in from this, pull in from that. I keep everything, you know, that I've ever done. So I remember
Yes.
try to remember where stuff is. And I build a slideshow simply by keep playing over in my mind what I'm seeing, my slides, seeing what I'm doing, and then start dropping it in.
Nice.
For writing, it's just
You don't
it's
have
just,
that.
It's just different,
Right.
okay? Because I don't have stuff to pull from, so I've really got to kind of plan out, what, you know, flow, what we're going to do. And to Nancy's point, I think sometimes you can start in the middle and work your way out.
Right.
You know,
Makes sense.
Well, so, because like I said, I have a lot of interest in this. So, one thing that I'm curious about is the legalities of it. So, as far as your employer goes, so like if I say, "Hey, this is my experience and this is where I work," am I allowed to say where I work? And
it'd
if
be up to
so,
your
do I?
employer.
So then I have to reach out to your employer's
Yeah.
legal
Yes.
department.
everyone is different.
Yes, yeah,
Every-
they're all different.
Right.
Absolutely.
Probably why it's important to kind of link up with someone who's done it before.
Right.
It's probably going to be someone you know that
Right.
works at your workplace.
Right.
Right.
So a lot of times, if I use an image, then depending on who I'm writing it for, what I'm doing it for, they want to know: do you have permission to use that image? Where'd you get that image? You know,
And
and you know, on the internet, it's getting kind of tough because you can find all this stuff online. You know, you've got the website where you found it, stuff like that. If it's on the internet, it's kind of pretty much
Right.
public
Freaky,
domain,
right.
right? But you know, but I always kind of put the website where I got it from.
Right.
You know,
For sure.
Right.
So
Yeah.
3 podcasts.
yeah, that's where you got that. But yeah,
I think
acknowledging-
the overall message here is, you know, try it.
Put yourself out there.
Well,
Put
yeah, I
yourself
mean,
out there.
it doesn't
A lot of
cost you
sense of
anything.
accomplishment that comes with it, pride, value to the community, a value to your resume.
yeah,
And
to
you
your
learn-
department,
and to you, you may likely learn to learn something doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
and I know, you know, where I am in Pittsburgh, they will then take those posters because they're printed. I mean, we tried electronic posters for a while, and they're just they're
It's not the same.
it's not the same, right?
Right.
It's like a book.
Right.
So we now display those in the department, right, or in the
Nice.
hallway up near the cafeteria, and there's a place for nursing and technologists to put their posters up for a period of time, and they're happy to do that because it shows then the patients that we're not just sitting back on our haunches, right? We're really trying to move the technology forward, and you know we've
Right.
got game kind of thing. So.
And again, just since we've been on the paper stuff, again, write ISMRT, even ASRT, write articles, home studies, write, you know, stuff like that all the time.
Yeah,
Right.
You know,
always.
always write an article on something.
One thing I found by doing this podcast for a few years that of all the MRI technologists we've met a lot. It seems to be a pretty common denominator is that they're all very creative people, right? So
Oh,
very
yeah.
artistic, and writing
Yeah.
is a creative outlet. So I could see how this is an episode that a lot of people, a lot of techs out there will find interesting,
Right.
and hopefully we'll find motivating too.
Yeah, and maybe they end up on Zone 3 podcast. We have to bring you in. Interview you as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll bring you out here when it's not midsummer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because one of the first things we check is your credentials. Well, I mean, I think that pretty much. Do you feel like we didn't cover it all, or did we?
You know,
No.
I mean, this is
sounds
a
good
topic
to me.
that it's a fun conversation to be had.
Yeah.
Certainly it's not anything like I've thought of before, but it's there's
That's
a lot
why
of
you have me.
Step one is passion. Like, what are you passionate about? And it makes the writing part easy, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
oh yeah.
Then get on
Absolutely.
PubMed,
Right.
look up what's out there,
Yeah.
see what your
Yeah.
sources are.
And if it's a medical device, reach out to that company.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, it's what's the word? It's for them.
So it's
Paul,
I
I think we're all on the same page here.
symbiotic.
It's a promotion for them. It's
Right.
marketing material for
And it's
them.
not just what you know; it's who you know. So reach out to those people that you know,
Right.
and follow in their footsteps and help them to be
Right.
your kind of guiding light.
Right.
Yeah.
And if anybody finds, you know, that they would have done this differently, what I wrote about, awesome.
Right.
Awesome. Call me. Let's talk. Let's, you know, build on this. And that's the other thing, you know, my name's on there.
Hey,
You can find it.
we'll definitely put a link too as well.
Okay.
In the description, so that'd be great.
Right.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Katie.
This was awesome. A new topic. Something that we haven't heard before. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. And so thank you for watching. So Zone 3 Podcast, thank you for subscribing. Do all those things that YouTubers tell you to do. Notification bell, tell your friends, blah, blah, blah. Reggie.
Yeah, no, of course we appreciate you guys. Yeah, and we really are looking forward to just the comments, the questions you guys have. Leave it in the comments for sure. And, you know, of course, we'll try to get to those. But thanks for watching again.
And then let's mention Kneecap real quick because they
Yeah,
helped
of
to
course.
sponsor
Big
this.
Shout out to Kneecap. You know, make sure you check them out, kneecapmedical.com. And then actually the article that Nancy was talking about, you'll find that in the description as well. And that is based off of their technology. So definitely check that out.
Zone 3 Podcast.
We are out.